Briefly, a brief lecture on the Beatles by Keith Jackman. The Beatles formed as an official group in 1960 with the official members at that time being Paul McCartney, Pete Best, George Harrison, and John Lennon, in that order. Paul, Pete, George, John. Having played clubs in Hamburg, the Beatles gained more popularity in Liverpool and performed frequently in the Cavern Club, where they met their new manager Brian Epstein in 1962. In March of that year, producer George Martin signed the Beatles to EMI's label in the condition that they dropped Pete Best as drummer. They did, Ringo was brought in, and the albums were made. The Beatles toured the world from 1963 to 1966, causing unheard-of pandemonium with teenage girls everywhere, and having some of the biggest live concerts ever up to that point. Additionally, they made movies such as A Hard Day's Night and Help at this time. However, due to the loudness of the screaming fans, the lack of being able to practice to become better at their art, and the rudeness that they were treated with in some countries, they decided to stop touring in 1966 to become a studio-only band. The first album back was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band. This is considered by many to be the greatest rock and roll album of all time, and for its psychedelic flavor and its origins as a concept album. Due to the decreased workload from stopping touring, the Beatles famously visited India and spoke with and learned from the Maharishi Yogi. This inspired many of the songs that would be written on the White Album, such as Dear Prudence and Sexy Sadie in 1968. However, shortly after the release of Sgt. Pepper, Epstein passed away from accidental drug overdose, and tensions began to rise. The Beatles all became interested in different projects. John started dating Yoko Ono, featured here in this picture, and she began to come to recording sessions, a thing which was previously taboo, even bringing in her own bed. Alan Klein became manager, despite a split in opinion from the individual members of the group. Paul became more bossy and critical of the individual members' contributions. Each member of the group quit for various reasons at various times. Ringo quit in 1968 for a brief period, George in 1969 during the Get Back recordings, John in the summer of 1969 following the completion of Abbey Road, and Paul in 1970, which ultimately dissolved the group as he filed suit to dissolve the contract. The Beatles left the scene as they entered it, in style, doing things no other group had done, including a performance on top of a roof and about getting arrested for doing the performance. To say that they were the best would be biased, but the influence left by Paul, John, George, and Ringo on music as we know it today is undeniable.